Let us start off the session by chanting Namo Tassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. All right. So we are continuing our study of the Brahmajala Sutta. Could one of you, okay, hold on, remind me what page we are on, please?
52.
52, thank you. All right. Page number 52, Doctrines of Fortuitous Arising. Aditya Samupannavada. Right. So can we have someone reading this? Please. Who would like to read? Dil, you want to read? Go ahead. You will have to unmute your mic.
Doctrines of Fortuitous Arising, page 52. There are bhikkhus, some recluses and Brahmins who are fortuitous or
Originationists.
Who on two grounds proclaim that the self and the world arise fortuitously, as by chance. And based on what, and invoking what, do the good recluses and Brahmins proclaim that the self and the world to arise originate fortuitously? Fortuitous arising, the non-percipient beings. There are bhikkhus, devas called non-percipient beings, asanna satta, who, when perception arises in them, they fall from that realm. Now, bhikkhus, there is a case where a certain being, having fallen from that realm, comes here to this world. Having come to this world, he goes forth from the home life into homelessness. And when he has gone forth into homelessness, by means of exertion, by means of striving, by means of devotion, by means of diligence, by means of right attention, he touches, meaning attains, mental concentration, such that he reflects that past life, but recollects not what is before that. So he says thus, the self and the world have arisen fortuitously by chance. What is the reason for this? Because I did not exist before, but now I am. Not having existed before, I have sprung into being. This because is the first reason based on which invoking which some recluses and Brahmins who are fortuitous originationists proclaim that the self and the world have arisen fortuitously. Number 18, fortuitous. Sorry.
A moment, dear. Now, I hope all of you understand what this is talking about. It is talking about the arising or falling away from a particular state of a plane of existence into another plane of existence by chance, without the play of other conditions, right? Without the play of other conditions. This was, I mean, there are people who would believe similar things right now, right? There is also entangled with this sort of belief, also we have the sort of belief that we come here or we are sort of assigned to this world by some sort of a higher power, right? But this specific vada or this specific ditti focuses on saying that we fall away and arise at a different plane or within a different plane by chance, without the support of other conditions, right? Please go on, Dale.
But just one question. Now, this asana satta is one form of the Brahma verse that comes in the fourth jhana plane. But I think they said that there's only a body and no mind. So is that the reason, non-percipient? So you have no perception because no mind. So when they suddenly have this mind, that they fall, is that the reason, Bante?
Well, the thing is, their mind, it is a phenomena that is quite special. With regards to asannasattas, the asannasattas body, which exists throughout that whole time the being is within the asannasatta plane, is sort of supported or powered by the bhavanga of, or the power of the bhavanga the person passed away by. Therefore, what is the word? Patisandhi, right? It is the power of the Patisandhi, but here, if we say the power of the Patisandhi, it is actually wrong. You must say the power of the Bhavanga. The power of the Bhavanga, which helps for that being to sort of persist, right? How it intricately happens, we do not know. Is it mentioned in any book? Not really, right? There are comments, but nothing that we can really count on, right? So please, yeah.
Thank you, Bante. Number 18, fortuitous arising, the reasoner inquirers. And secondly, based on what, invoking what, do the good recluses and Brahmins proclaim that the self and the word to arise originate fortuitously? Here, because a certain recluse and Brahmin is a reasoner or an inquirer, fabricating it through reasoning, having investigated through mental inquiry by way of his own intelligence, he says that the self and the word have arisen fortuitously by chance. This because is a second reason, based on which, invoking which, some recluses and Brahmins who are fortuitous originationists proclaim that the self and the word have arisen fortuitously. It is on these four grounds because that the good recluses and Brahmins proclaim the self and the word to be partly eternal and partly non-eternal.
Right.
Whatever.
Now, I want you, now as we go through these different ditthis, right, you will come across, or we have already come across, the repetition of the wording, having investigated it through mental inquiry by way of his own wits. He says thus, right? That is a very important part. What this means, this is giving us the how a ditthi is formed. It is formed when, because of our egocentric manner of inquiry. Egocentric manner of inquiry, what I mean is, you fail to see beyond what you know or what you have seen, right? What you know and what you have seen. We fail to see this beyond, right? Because of that, now you have come into a specific view, addicted to say, this is this, right? Now, for example, now I was in conversation with a devotee of mine yesterday from Sri Lanka, who participates sometimes in these classes, right? So he is a very young person. So he asked me, Bhante, we know, okay, meditation, all of this is, yes, we know. But what about, things like rebirth, things like, how do we actually know, right? How do we actually know? Now, of course, all of you or most of you who are here are veterans, almost veterans in the practice, and not veterans, but you have been practicing for a long time and all of that, and you have a lot of shraddha and belief in the teachings. But I think your children, your grandchildren might have asked you the same thing, right? How do we know, right? The thing is now, if we put it into a bit of logic here, we have no problem believing when NASA says something, but we have never seen. They might show a graph or something, but who knows how to read those graphs without a PhD in that field, right? They might show different things, but we don't really know. But we believe. Why do we believe it? Because NASA is from America. It is a senior organization. It is a renowned organization. All of these things, right? Because of that, we believe it. Because of that, we believe that there are other clusters of universes out there. Because of that, we believe the different things that it says, right? But we don't know. We believe because we have some sort of trust that it is saying something or it is doing what it was established to do. In terms of the Buddha, in a very similar fashion, we believe that the Buddha is doing what he was supposed to be doing, and we use the meditation and what we proceed with the meditation and experience with the meditation to grow more trust towards that same thing, right? Everything in our life, including the purpose that we went to university, we studied for our degrees, got instilled in different occupations. All of these things we did with the hope that we were able to find that happiness, that trust, that belief, right? That trust, that belief. Similarly, that trust and belief is something which is required within ourselves, but also this trust and belief in Buddhism is always founded and supported by wisdom. So we are taught to sort of have an open mind to enable ourselves to go beyond the dictates. Now, in meditation, when I tell you to observe the sensations, which you have now for these past 5 years, maybe heard no less than 500 times. Look at the sensations, look at the sensations. Huh? How many times have I told you, right? No less than 500 times. Now, I have been telling you this. Now, you are people who have, before coming or meditating with me, you have also meditated with other monks and other teachers and other videos and all of these other things, right? You have your preconceived notions on what a sensation is. Why? Because you have felt what a sensation is. But now, if you all think, if you were to stick on to that sensation, let us just, for example, say the sensation of the shoulder. If you stick on and you say, okay, this is the sensation Bhante wants me to watch, this is how the sensation is going to be. We all know now, with the experience that we have, that if you do that, you'll be stuck there, right? This is the same thing with regard to this dictate, right? You think that what you know is the be all and the end all. Because of that, you find yourself stuck. You find yourself on a leash of your own making. That is what here, by when it repeats, having investigated it through mental inquiry by way of his own wits. We always come back. Why is it own wits? Own wits is because our connection to the ego, right? Our connection to the ego. Now, people do find, even with relation to mental illness, depression, and other sorts of different types of mental illness which are there, the difficult part of coming out of this mental illness is believing that you can, is believing that you are a person who is capable of coming out of it. Convincing yourself that you deserve it and you can and you will be able to achieve it for yourself is the most difficult part. In Alcoholics Anonymous, in this addiction, which is sort of, which has a long history of recovery through the Catholic system, right? One of the parts that they use is they teach people that Lord, the God is shining a light on them, right? To sort of help them out of their addiction from alcohol or wherever it is that they are. This is for no other reason than the fact that to respect someone, to believe that someone that you respect is now helping you out of it. Because when we come into that situation in our life, we tend to not respect anyone else around us. This is all things that we do to make ourselves believe of a certain thing. The Panchasila I told you is the same thing, right? When you kayana macha chittena pamadena mayakatang, that is also the same thing. May I be forgiven for what I have done against the Buddha, Dhamma, and the Sangha through body, mind, and word. That is also the same thing. You wearing white to the temple is also the same thing. A person, a lay person, shaving off their hair and donning robes is also the same thing. This is all to cut something out of our life which is not contributing to something which is good, which is not contributing to something which is good. But because through time, we find ourselves having sort of taken up different practices. I mean, you all are older than me. You know the culture and tradition more than I do, right? With all these things that we have taken up, we have forgotten or we have started forgetting one important thing, that this is all to forget one part of it. So we hold on now because we are creatures who like to cling. Now we hold on to different things of culture and all of these other things, which again weighs us down. Right? It is almost as if now we are all Sri Lankan. More, I think all of us are Sri Lankan, yes, right? We know of the way Sri Lankans living in Sri Lanka, the sort of respect they have, or rather the sort of the liking that they have to fair people, right? To white-skinned people, right? Why is it that the color white shows us some sort of purity while the color black does not? Why is it in the same way that the color black, when we see on the faces of people, that we consider them lesser to the people who are of a lighter tone? These are things that we ingrain on into ourselves, of course, with culture, society, and all of these things. But these are also things that we have to sort of understand and get rid of. Because at the end of the day, those things do not really hold anything which is true other than norms that we choose to follow. So much so, I mean, let us, we talk about ourselves now with regards to black and white, the people of darker skin tones and lighter skin tones. In the past, throughout history, from the starting of when Mogallana Maharatan Wahanse was colored in blue, this is an act of racism. That Mughal Maharatan Wahanse was colored in blue. He was black. He was a person of black skin tone. But we did not want to sort of put that there. Because when we take even the Indians, people of that color, we regard them through that culture, we regard them as something which is of a lower caste or something of that sort. Something which is not so pure, something which is dirty, something which is all of that. These are now things, now with like this ditty, these are things that we have to get rid of. These are in the similar way how you would tell, okay, this person is a bad person, and you cling on to that for the rest of your life, right? That is not something which falls as a Dhammic practice. These are ways from the surrounding that you have of yourself. These are ways that you have to sort of see beyond and practice a Dhamma in a practical way from the little things that you do. We try to do, we try to go into the different types of ditties and all of that. But remember, you must start with the small things. The small things mean the things which are closest to you as a layperson, as people living in this world. That is very important. So when you see, by way of his own wits, remind that onto yourself to understand this is what it says. Do not be stuck upon what you think is right. Allow yourself to have an open mind to the ability to support yourself with the ability to see beyond what you think or what your limits of seeing are. Right? What your limits of seeing are. I remember now when I was a boy going into the aranyas and asking these sort of eminent monks, what is vipassana, because vipassana, I could not understand what vipassana was. Is it that you must sit down and you must think of impermanent suffering and non-self? If so, how does that work? And the monks was, they were trying to tell me, no, I mean, you just sit down, you have an object, and be with the object, and it will slowly come to you. You will realize certain things. At the time, of course, I did not understand. Right? At the time, I did not understand. Why I did not understand was because I was clinging on to trying to understand vipassana through the knowledge I already had at that time. It is only knowing or learning to sort of break free of your update or your sort of knowledge and to sort of see or open your mind into seeing something outwards or something that you have not comprehended before, that allows a person to actually then see Abhidhamma. I told you, if you are studying Abhidhamma and not meditating, you will not really understand Abhidhamma. Why is that? Same thing like these ditties. We try to understand the Abhidhamma with the knowledge or whatever it is that you have at the moment, which will not happen. Right? This is the important part in this sutta to understand. These are all things which sort of hides or sort of corners you into a certain pattern, but it is that pattern that we essentially have to break. Right? Okay. Damsi, did you have a question? Yeah, did?
Yes.
Yeah, Damsi, please go on.
Yeah. When you talk about the believing rebirth, actually, most of the people, they believe rebirth not because the Buddhist script says, but there are some positive evidence to suggest rebirth. Now, for example, if you have come across the Professor Ian Stevens' two books, actually these two books clearly showing there's a suggesting there's a possibility of rebirth happening actually. So when it comes to believing rebirth, I personally believe rebirth because I have certain amount of scientific evidence to suggest that. So because it's suggesting, so I believe it on the basis of Buddhism. The other thing is actually, I have another question. The reason why that Rahatan Mahansa was painted the blue, because in India, if you have traveled in India, that you must have seen, in India, actually, you can see the color difference even among North Indians. It it is even from the same family, you can see fair skin and dark skin. I don't think there's a discrimination in that respect. The reason why they have painted the blue, because even in more of literature, they don't call it black, they call it blue.
Neela.
Neela Varalasa. Yeah, that's right. It's that's the main reason why even your hair is called Neela Varalasa. So that's the main reason. So that when it comes to
when it
that,
comes to now Neela Varlasa, when
yeah,
it comes to tones, when it
yeah,
comes to tones, people do maintain that black is a very dark tone of blue,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
even now.
yeah, yeah. That's right. Yes, that's possibility. Yes, yes.
So
Mhm.
even now, when you
Yeah.
take or when you go into the color tones,
Hmm, hmm.
black comes as a very dark tone or one of the darkest tones of
Yeah,
blue.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
It then
yeah.
goes on to another tone also.
Yeah, yeah. That's yeah,
you know
yeah.
Yeah, I know.
but knowing, I believe now, knowing better,
Yeah.
it might be time to sort of reform ourselves a bit. That
Yeah.
is what I believe.
I,
Know-
I,
Knowing
Bhante, because there's no harm in painting, uh, depicting the actual color of that Rahatan Mahanse, uh, to differentiate that he has come from that part or that group,
With the
and
gods.
the Buddha was being fair skinned. Even in the quite number of sutras, they mention that Buddha is fair skinned,
with golden skin.
golden skin, yes. And so probably that may be the reason why they have identified slightly different colors for the Rahatan Mahanses. So, but when it comes to Sri Lanka, I have been working in a I don't know whether you have come across Eastern Paper Mills Corporation as an engineer. My first job was there, and the chief engineer was a German fitter. He's not a qualified person. Just because he was white skin, they have given him the chief engineer post. So that's how they actually, the reason why they worship white skin, it's coming from our
Colonized.
history,
Yeah.
colonization. Yeah,
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 yeah, yeah,
right.
yeah.
Yeah. And, and that's why the candy and
I think amidst Corona, with a violent, aggressive amount of protests for against Unilever. Unilever also apologized for Fair and Lovely.
Mm.
So,
That's when that's all the colonial past, because even the Candians, who were the ones who were the kings before the white people, they always think because they're Candians and they're fairer skinned, So that, but if you look in the Indian history, God Vishnu is always painted blue. God Kataragama's wife, the second one was Valimata, is painted blue and like bluish green. And Venkateswaran, who is Vishnu in Tirupati, is black, right? And that's not because of any connotation of anything lesser. But I think that in those countries like in India, but in Sri Lanka, of course, fair and lovely is a thing that if you're fair, you have a better chance. But coming on to what you were explaining, Bante, about the ditti, this is very relevant now, because now if you look at a lot of Buddhists who are educated and who are professionals, they will believe anything, and now science is showing this and quantum physics is, but really science can only know something so long as it's replicable. So if something can be replicated, it can be measured, if there are laws, then it's proven. But then these laws, at one time people said the world was flat and everybody built, when there's some other instruments, it was something. So even science is purely the ego, and how, to what level that we have developed our mind. And what you say, Bante, learning Abhidhamma from the book is still only the mind. And if you don't go to thoughtless awareness, and if you don't go to the things what the Buddha says to have reflect, to wisely reflect, and if you don't reflect wisely, then you won't be able to cut through the thinking mind, and the pure bare attention or the realization of the truth comes only there, Bansi. So all these things, whether we learn from science or whether we learn because it's in a book or because it was replicable, it's for me only science. And that's why step by step, when some periscope comes, when a stethoscope comes, when something comes, something, we believe something. But as we go on, now we are saying it's not the brain, but it's actually heart, and there's heart-brain coherence. Now it's the stomach. Can you see? Science is also limited. It's only thinking. So that's why what you are saying, Bhante, ultimately it's a meditation. And when you have gone to thoughtlessness, when you go to reflection, when you go, wise reflection, if you don't have those parts of it, you can't really see. But the Buddha always says, because he has let go on all the attachments and the desires, and because he has realized for himself, not with the thinking mind, but because and that's when the ultimate truth gets realized. That's why we are struggling, because we are using our intellect all the time. And if we don't reflect, and if we don't have unisa manasikara, and if we don't, then these truths don't come to us. We only know as much as our brain is.
Shall we come back to the sutta now? Yeah,
Yes.
it's a long sutta.
Yes. Okay. So we are on page 52.
When we have an Anguttara Nikaya. Huh? This is a Diga Nikaya sutta.
Okay, Bhante. Sorry. So page 52, we have the last paragraph of the first bit, 63.6. These truths, bhikkhus, are deep, difficult to see, difficult to understand, peaceful, sublime, beyond the sphere of reasoning, subtle, to be known by the wise, which the Tathagata, having realized for himself through direct knowledge, declares it. And those who would rightly praise the Tathagata in accordance with reality would speak of them. So that's the top bit of page 52. And we are now coming to number 5, doctrines of fortuitous arise. Sorry. Yeah. Oh, sorry, where were you? Sorry, but it should be page 53. 53, yeah. And we came to the self and the word fortuitous by chance. Now it's refrain praising the Tathagata rightly, and so summary of speculations about the past. The third paragraph there.
No, so it's you had to start from paragraph 70. You start.
70, right. Oh yeah, okay, 70, 2.33. It is on these 4 grounds, because that the good recluses and Brahmins proclaim the self and the world to be partly eternal and partly non-eternal. That's where I stopped. Whatever recluses or Brahmins there may be who proclaim the self and the world to be partly eternal and partly non-eternal, they do so on these 4 grounds, or on any of them. There is none beyond this. Next paragraph. Refrain praising the Tathagata rightly. 70.2. This because the Tathagata understands, and he understands thus. These standpoints, thus grasped, thus misapprehended, will lead to such a future destiny, to such a state beyond. And thus the Tathagata understands, he understands too what transcends this. Yet he does not misapprehend, cling on to that understanding. And because he is free from wrong grasping, he has known for himself, within himself, the cool, happy state. Having understood as they really are, the arising and the ending and the gratification and the danger and the escape regarding feelings, the Tathagata Bhikkhus is freed through non-clinging. These truths, bhikkhus, are deep, difficult to see, difficult to understand, peaceful, sublime, beyond the sphere of reasoning, subtle, to be known by the wise, with the Tathagata, having realized for himself through direct knowledge, declares it. And those who would rightly praise the Tathagata in accordance with reality would speak of them. Summary of speculation about the past. 71. Because it is on these 18 grounds that those recluses and Brahmins who are speculators about the past, who hypothesize about the past, assert various dogmas regarding the past. Whatever recluses and Brahmins there may be who proclaim the self and the world to be eternal, all of them do so on these 18 grounds, or on any one of them. There is none beyond this. Refrain, praising the Tathagata rightly. This because the Tathagata knows thus. These standpoints thus grasped, thus wrongly clung to, lead to such a destiny, to such a hereafter. And the Tathagata knows too what is beyond this, yet he does not wrongly cling to even that understanding. Not wrongly clinging, He knows coolness, nirvana, for himself.
A minute, please. Now, when it comes to the jnana pertaining to omniscience, omniscience Pali.
It's here.
So with regards to the Tathagata's omniscience, right, it is said now with all the knowledge and the jnana, the wisdom that the Tathagata has, the Tathagata's mind exists in a peace of silence and solitude, right? That is emphasized when it comes to explaining who the Tathagata is, right? So even when, for example, it is now, one might imagine, for example, if we are doing something, we are wondering about something, all the time we are thinking of all the million things going on in our lives. The Tathagata's mind is not like that, right? The Tathagata's mind, because of this coolness, which is now referred to within the sutta, this relates to that the way the Tathagata's mind is, it is cool, it is relaxed, it is not thinking about all of these things, it only thinks about things when it comes to that, right? Other than that, it does not think about it, right? The Tathagata, through the extinguishing of ego, has been able to develop far beyond that, to come into a position where now one would be able to sort of be within the present moment and only concern oneself with things of the present moment. So the Tathagata is not thinking about karma all the time. The Tathagata is not thinking about the beginning and the ending of the world. He's not. He only thinks about these things when either something appears to him, something is happening in front of him, when maybe a question is asked, and all of these things, right? And the question, before the question is answered also, he ponders upon the question and answers the question, right? That is made clear, right? That is made clear, right? So for example, now if we are doing, today is a sutta class, right? Now I am going to sort of, in one splur sort of backtrack you to some sort of abhidhamma calculation, right? You're going to be like, okay, I know this. You'll have to sort of refresh a bit to sort of get it, because now we are in a sutra mode, right? It is somewhat of that sort, right? It is some, but here the Tathagata, he is able to dwell in this coolness, in this peace, in this present moment that comes through sort of letting go of the hindrances and defilements. Please go on.
72, rephrasing, praising the Tathagata rightly. This because the Tathagata knows
No,
that.
73 now.
73. These truths because are deep, difficult to see, difficult to understand, peaceful, sublime, beyond the sphere of reasoning, subtle, to be known by the wise, with the Tathagata, having realized for himself through direct knowledge, declares it. And those who would rightly praise the Tathagata in accordance with reality would speak of them. Now we go on to D, speculations about the future.
All right. Thank you, Dil, for
Thank
reading. Now, speculations about the future. Aparanta Kappa, right? Is there anyone else who would like to read? Damsiri, would you like to?
Speculation about the future. There are bhikkhus, some recluses, and Brahmins who are speculators about future, who hypothesize about the future, and who on 44 grounds assert various dogmas regarding the future. And the good recluses, Brahmins, who are speculators about the future, who hypothesize about the future, who on 44 ground assert various dogmas regarding the future. Based on what? Invoking that, do they assert the 44 grounds? Number one, immorality.
Immortality.
Immortality.
Immortality. Immortality. The doctrine of consciousness, conscious survival. Sanya Vada. Conscious survival. There are bhikkhus, some recluses and Brahmins who hold the doctrine of conscious survival after death. They proclaim conscious survival after death on 16 grounds. And the good honorable recluses and Brahmins who hold the doctrine of conscious survival after death, based on what? Invoking what? Do they assert the 16 grounds? They proclaims it thus: the self or soul after death is conscious, intact, and has form rupa, formless arupi, both has form and formless, rupi cha arupi cha, neither has form nor formless, never rupi narupi, finite, antava, infinite, antava, both finite and infinite.
We will just read the English terms.
Okay. Neither infinite nor infinite, of unified consciousness, which is perception, of diversified consciousness, of limited consciousness, of boundless consciousness, undividedly happy, undividedly suffering, which is unsatisfactory, both happy and suffering, neither happy nor suffering.
All right. A moment, please. Now, Ekatta Sanni of unified consciousness. Ekatta Sanni, what does that mean? Ekatta Sanni means the perception to be the same. Ekatta. Eka wage. Right? Nanatta Sanni. Nanatta Kaya, Nanatta Sanya. I think you've heard of it. Meaning various, right? Different kinds of sort of consciousness, perceptions, perceivable patterns, right? That. Paritta Sanni is very limited, meaning very squared off to very small, sort of unable to do big things, right? Very small, sort of limited consciousness levels. Right? Appamana Sanni is vast and spaced and wide sort of abilities with regards to perception and consciousness, right? Ekanta Sukhi, right? Which is the same type of happiness, right? A person who experienced the same kind of happiness, right? Ekanta Dukhi, that is the same kind of suffering, prolonging of the same kind of suffering, right? Sukhi Dukhi, both happy and suffering. With regard to the mind, both happy and suffering are dukkhama asukhi, meaning neither happy nor dukkha or suffering, right? It is on these 16 grounds. Damsiri, please continue.
Yeah. It is on these 16 grounds, bhikkhus, that these recluses and Brahmins who hold the doctrine of conscious survival after death.
Right. Now, what does that mean? Holding the conscious survival after death. Now, for example, I think something that we are quite used to is, remember, we think that after death the antara baba exists for 7 days before we pass away. Now that is something of this sort, right?
Mm,
That is something of this sort. Now you see how many boxes did we tick with all the beliefs that we had. I think
mm,
we went on a couple of beliefs, isn't it?
yeah,
Right?
yeah,
Through the starting of the sutta, at the end of the day, being a Buddhist is having so much of ditties. a cultural Buddhist, right? So that is
yeah,
why the study of the sutras are so
yeah,
important, to
yeah,
discuss and to sort of understand our practice to a deeper level, to break free of the dogmas that we have sort of put
yeah,
ourselves into, not because of anything else, because of what we believe that everyone else believes,
yeah.
right? Okay, so then please go on, Damsiri.
Bhante, I had something because these ditties,
Mm.
even the modern world has got ditties.
Yeah.
There's something called biocentrism,
Yeah.
which is a modern concept
Okay.
that consciousness and the materiality comes together.
Okay.
So that's based on the quantum theory and things like that. So the what I say is actually these deities are even existing, coming new things today.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah,
I mean, one of the main reasons why there is so much of mental health illness in today's world is
yeah,
because we cling on to these views so
yeah, yeah,
much,
yeah,
right? The tightened, hardcore attachment to
yeah,
certain states of mind, views, and all of these things is what has led to the sort of the rampant amount of mental illness in the world, right?
yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. Whatever the recluses or Brahmins there may be who hold the doctrine of conscious survival after death, they do so on these 16 grounds or on any one of them. There is none beyond this.
Mhm.
Refrain, praising the Tathagata rightly. This bhikkhus the Tathagata knows thus. These standpoints thus grasped, thus wrongly clung to, lead to such a destiny, to such a hereafter, and that Tathagata knows too what is beyond this.
Mm.
Yet he does not wrongly cling to even that understanding.
Mhm.
Not wrongly clinging, he knows coolness, nirvana for himself. Because having understood as they really are,
Just a moment, Damsiri.
yeah,
I want to take you all back to this sentence. These 10 points are thus grasped, thus wrongly clung to, lead to such a destiny, to such a hereafter. And the Tathagata knows too what is beyond this. Yet he does not wrongly cling to even that understanding. Not wrongly cling, he knows coolness for himself. What is this? This is so practical to all of us. This, to me, speaks so highly of the fear and attachment that we have to maybe our next life, towards to death, to the death experience. All of these things. What is it saying? Look at these words. Knowing this, he does not cling to even that, right? He does not cling to even that. Remember, we spoke of when we were speaking, I can't remember which sutta it was, but when we were speaking of hell, right, and death, I think it was maybe in Abhidhamma we were speaking of this. We spoke of the dangers of fearing death, right? Now, in the Metta Sutta, which we all know, right, heart by heart, right, in the Metta Sutta, one of the benefits of that Metta Sutta is that you do not fear death. And also, as a result, the potential the potential of you arising within a woeful realm is substantially reduced. Why is that? Because that fear no longer exists, right? Because that fear no longer exists. That is why I told you before as well, when we sort of take up through culture, whatever it is, whatever reasons, we take up different practices thinking this should be thus. Now, you, and of course, when I was younger, I remember, Buddhism was at a state where it was all about apaya, 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 right? I think, maybe in the 2000s, I think I kind of like maybe remember everything. There was no sutta beyond the, what is that sutra about the apaya? About the Avicii, Naraka and all of that. What is that sutta, Damsiri? Matagada. About the burning and, all of that.
No. I can remember.
Yeah.
I can remember even the Vesaks.
Yeah.
They actually show the different apayas and how people are being tortured and things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, even in the Vesak day.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And this is the belief that through that you can, with just that, you can go closer. That is not there.
Yeah.
How many sutras out of all the sutras that you have did the Buddha speak on apayas and all of this? The Buddha was not scaring people. The Buddha, of course, that part of Dhamma is there, but our Dhamma is predominantly supported by facts, by knowledge, by logic, and by understanding. Right?
Yeah.
And by understanding, not by fear. We are not governed by fear. We are taught to let go of fear. Right? Fear is the reason that we still hold on and cling on to. Fear is the reason that we cannot understand what sunyata is, because we are afraid to let go of what we have, thinking that what we will end up with in terms of sunyata will not sort of be as something that we have, right? That is why we sometimes even fear Nibbana, because to us, Nibbana is a concept that is, we've heard about it, right? We like to sort of think about it, but how many of us honestly feel the true urge of sunyata enabled nirvana in our life, right? It is difficult. There is no need to sort of sugarcoat this. It is difficult. Why is it difficult? Because of the clinging and attachment we have to things both physical and mental, right? When in the dark, right? In the dark, this sort of uneasiness that you have is actually something which is really connected to that.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Yeah, me. My dogs were still scared of the dark.
Yes.
So it is the same thing, right? It is a very, very similar. When your mind, that is why even now, Sunyata meditation, Dhamsriyas, why did we just do 10 minutes? Because sometimes people get scared. I did this in Sri Lanka for about 20 or 30 minutes. I knew something was going to happen. A woman came up to me and told, Bhante, I felt like taking the chair and throwing it at you. And that happens. People go into states of absurd behaviors. People start speaking in tongues, right? People start wobbling around and sort of dancing. Why? The mind starts taking over out of fear. Right? When you do vipassana, you might have seen, I've also explained to you certain aspects where people start turning and changing and, moving around without their conscious attention. What is that? The subconscious mind trying to distract you, right? That is fear. That is the deep-rooted fear, right? And even in our lives, sometimes we are scared to let go of the hate, scared to let go of the hindrances, because it has been your close friend, confidant for so many years, that we sort of feel sort of that we are causing some sort of, that we are being somewhat unfair to ourselves to let go of hate. It is unfair to let go of all of those sort of burdens, right? That is all to do with fear. And in Buddhism, that is something that we try to let go of. Yes, Devik, I can see you jumping there. Yeah,
So Bante,
yeah,
when you were talking about fear, I have always been frightened of the dark as a child. Also, I have been that. But this thing about letting go of, hating people and stuff, that's not in me. Never. People have whatever they have done, I let go, and I have never had that aspect.
yeah.
So you were talking about the fear. That's why I was saying, oh, I shouldn't fear about the dark.
These exist in different ways, but also realize sometimes there are things that we also don't know about ourselves, right? That is also there. But of course, these people take it in different ways. People take it, some people are very front and forward with their aggression. Some people, for example, like me, very passive aggressive people. Right, very passive aggressive. so so people portray these things in different ways, right? But of course we are not generalizing, but this is all fear, right? A lot to do with fear. And it is now, I don't know, some of you might have heard, or I like to quote this sort of quote from Osho. It says, to attain, no, to commit yourself to enlightenment, you must be crazy.
Oh.
Right? You must be crazy to commit yourself to enlightenment. Now, some people get a bit offended when you say, use the word crazy, right?
They're all crazy people.
Now, what it actually means is this.
Mm-hmm.
Since we are children, we were taught something.
Right.
The doctrine of enlightenment goes beyond all of those teachings. Goes beyond all of that. You have to let go of all of those teachings that you have been brought up in, marinated in, seasoned in, fed, all of that, to be able to attain to a mindset which enables a person to attain Nibbana. That is what it means, being crazy.
Yes.
Right? Not the literal sense of going crazy, but to take that much of a risk. To take that much of a risk, it is said you have to be crazy to want to attain Nibbana. Right? So that is what, yes, Dil, what are you trying to say?
That is why the Buddha didn't want to teach his realization, and Brahma Sahampati has to
That
come.
there was doubt, that there was a certain amount of doubt whether people will actually understand this.
Yeah.
Right? And true enough, no, I mean, look at the world now.
Yes.
And true enough, look at the world now, right? So all of this, right, with regard the Dhamma, is very much a part and parcel of all of us. When we say Anitya, Anitya is a part of me as much as it is a part of you. It is a part of this whole house, this house as much as all of your houses. Dhamma is very much a part of us. The part that we can't understand this is that fear. Will this take me somewhere, or will I fail? Will this actually, that sort of, calibratory sort of risk assessment always tells us, no, it's better to have one foot here than to actually jump all in, right? to jump all in, which is understandable. But I must also mention, with many of the characters that I have personally seen through, who have put their whole entire self. Sometimes you see, of course, sometimes people sort of leave their jobs and then come into the Dhamma, that is there. And then you find different other things, people would do to enable themselves. For example, even monks, sometimes we find monks going in sort of putting aside everything else within the monastery and then going into sort of secluded parts of monasteries to meditate. It doesn't really work like that. This is something that must always be organic, right? Now, for example, we speak about Kalyana Mitras. You dump all of your friends and you go and live with a bunch of hippies somewhere. That's not going to work.
No, exactly.
That's not going to work. You might say, okay, my friends are, too smart. I'm going to associate some dumb people. And you go and associate some uneducated people in some village. Not to say that villages are dumb, but you go in search of people who don't know much, right? It's not going to work. It never has worked. What I have often seen is through that comes a lot of aversion, right? Through that comes a lot of things that sometimes hurt your practice. Be organic. Even with these views and all of these things, organically go into the practice. That is where the true practice is, or else you burn out. Just like work and any other thing, you burn out, right? You burn out. Now, for example, bhikkhus were people who traveled. Now, these days, if you travel as a bhikkhu, if you travel a lot, you actually look down upon, right? But in the days of the Buddha and how it was for a long time is bhikkhus are not people who stayed in one place. You're actually not supposed to stay in one place, right? In the sutras, it is told one that stays in one place for a long time, like water that stagnates, smells bad, and all of that. It is mentioned in the sutras. You're not supposed to stay too long or too less in one place. You're supposed to too less. Why? Because you will not make Kalyana Mitras, right? You're like a tourist, right? So you spend a bit of time, you get to know everyone around, and then you move, right? These days you can't do that. People will call you, a tourist and all of these things. Right now, these days, why is that? Mental stimulation. To stimulate yourself, to put yourself through experiences that will challenge your practice. That is why. The Buddha did not say there are women on the road, for the monks, I mean, there are women on the road, so stay in the monastery. The Buddha did not say that. The Buddha said there are people who are beautiful, there are people who can arouse your lust. So what do? With eyes cast down, you go. Right? With eyes, you protect yourself.
Yes.
Don't tell other people what to wear. Don't tell other people. Now, when you go to these monasteries, Thai monasteries, now in Australia, when I was in Australia, here, of course, people don't wear like that here because most often it is cold here, right? So you can't wear. In the Thai monasteries, which are run by the Western bhikkhus around Australia, I remember, sometimes, there are girls who come wearing miniskirt. No one tells anything, right? We are not in the practice of telling other people what to do. We are in the practice of telling ourselves what to do. Right? Now, in the Muslim religion, because the woman's appearance arouses lust in a man, the women were told to wear a hijab or whatever it is that they call, a burqa or something. Right? In our religion, we say, no, if a woman wants to do whatever, that is that person's right. You tame yourself. It is our taming that we look at. No one else's, right? This all comes down to everything. Every part of the sutta that we are going through, the Brahmajala Sutta, one of the most important sutras in the whole Sutta Pitaka, is all down to what, because of our internalized or attachment towards our egocentric patterns of thinking, the problems and views that take us away from the attainment of Nibbana. Right? Every day, question yourself. Now, I was listening to this special agent, a US special agent who is now retired. What she says is, she's been asked, how do you, know when people are lying, right? No, first of all, she came from a dirt poor background, right? And now when you look at her, she's a prim and proper. She sits very beautifully. She holds herself well. And the person who is interviewing her, she asks, okay, you came from such a background, right? How are you like this now? And her answer is beautiful. She said, self-awareness.
Awareness.
Self-awareness. That was her thing. That was on what she said. She said, it is to self-awareness. I observed the way that I'm behaving. I picked up what the nice things around me was, and I observed and I embodied that. Self-awareness.
Awareness.
Things to say, to do, how to act, how to behave, all of these things. Self-awareness. It's awareness, right? What is it that I am saying which is troubling this person in front of me? What is it that I am doing that annoys that person? What is it in my words that triggers my children or my partner or whoever it is? Self-awareness. This self-awareness goes a long way, right? And then her specialty is knowing or being able to pick up when people lie. So she is known as the human lie detector.
Oh, okay.
She is asked the human lie detector. So she is asked, how do you do it? Right? What is your technique? Is there a way? Again, what she says is awareness. You have to be able to observe a person, observe the way the face changes or the body or the voice or whatever it is. It is a lot of awareness. Basically, that is it. You can't say that this is the way that people lie. No, people lie in different ways for different reasons. What you have to be aware of are all these different sentences. This is all awareness. This is all awareness, right? We, in our doctrine, in our Dhamma, we have such a precious doctrine and Dhamma. Such a precious doctrine and Dhamma, which it seems that the West is making use of very well. The West is milking it like a cash cow, to say the least, right? But what are we doing with it, right? We are not doing much with it, but we can do a lot with it. Probably because now, for me, what I understand is because I was a Catholic boy who came into Buddhism, I find that there is a lot that Buddhism has to offer. But of course, people who are my age, my sort of friends and all of them who are Buddhist born, they don't see much. Why? Because they've been brought up, right? Because they've been brought up in it. That is also that mentality where we then say, develop a childlike mind. Not letting the ego be constant and static. Not letting what does that mean? Not letting the ego being constant and static. That means not letting the ego continue in one way. See the difference in every moment. The opportunity in every day. The opportunity in every instance.
Exactly, Bhante.
Thank you, Dil, for reclaiming that it was correct. Thank you.
Yay!
Dil approves. Okay, so that is what we are sort of aiming to through this practice. It is that position that we come to. this self-difference, this sort of change that we sort of bring. We are not stuck. The only person who sort of makes ourselves feel stuck is ourselves. We are not stuck, right? We are not stuck. It is our attitude, it is our mind which can feel stuck, right? You are all people who can make decisions for yourself. Do not think that your family is, you know, at this point, there are so many other things that you could do for yourself. Get yourself engaged on a process, on a path that you will be able to sort of do those things. Meditation retreats or going outside to meditate or whatever it is, traveling or whatever it is. Of course, now Corona, but you know, at least afterwards or something, you know, where you will be able to motivate yourself to do things that you can sort of find passion with, can sort of motivate you, will push you to sort of challenge yourself in different ways. That is so very important. So very important, right? So shall we any other questions that anyone has? Any questions? Yes, Pushpa.
Bante, could you explain how the Metta Sutta takes away the fear of death?
Yeah. The Metta Sutta, how the Metta Sutta takes away the fear of death is it's not in a direct way, but in a very indirect way. But in this indirect manner, what essence of the Metta Sutta promotes that sort of mentality is the mentality of openness. Metta is a very open practice, if you understand what I mean.
Yeah.
Right? It is a vibrant practice. It is a radiating practice. It is a practice that you sort of send to all directions, right? When we sort of say, for example, we sometimes bring in Metta and Marananusati together also, right? We do Metta to people who are sick as well, or people who are sort of, who will die. We can use death as a point for Metta. In any ways, Metta promotes a mentality which sort of embraces the reality of the world with its bad parts, right? With its bad parts, meaning we embrace the fact that people are a composition of good and bad. That is what we sort of help, or that is what we try to develop in Metta. With that, what we do is, in that process, what we try to do is, or through that process, we develop an openness to love, to have compassion on each and every part of our life. It is through that we get rid of this fear of death. Not get rid, but actually substantially understand it. Substantially understand it.
Is it when we show metta to ourselves?
It's everything.
Everybody.
It's absolutely everything, right? Now, in preparation, now there are different ways. You know, this is where we have to be creative, right? Now, all of you, know sometimes, of
We are
course.
going to die. Yes, we know.
Sorry?
Death is inevitable, I said.
Yes, death is inevitable. ඒක හැමදාම අපි අහපු බණ. හරි.
ඒක හිතෙනවා.
Death is inevitable. That is all right. But, you know, now we have heard it so many times that it has lost a bit of value, right? Death is inevitable. That is for sure. But with all your lives, you all are very unique in your own perspectives and whatever, because of your life experiences. You know what is going on within you, but sometimes as people, we sometimes are also blind to certain facts regarding ourselves. That is also something that you must acknowledge. that you can be blind to certain things about yourself, right? We don't see, because remember that our eyes are pointing forward, right? There is so much that we cannot see here. With that openness, we embrace the fact through metta, we can devise our own metta mantra. Do you understand? Our own metta mantra in a way in a way that it suits you, right? It in a way that it suits you. Now, for example, when you have so much of hate, right, or so much of sort of cynical views regarding these people around you, then often people use death, because death is something which warms everyone's heart, right? Death is something which warms every person's heart. Death is something which warms a person's heart. Then you might say, but Bante, what about these suicide people and suicide bombers and all of these people? Remember that these suicide bombers are also doing something to die and go to heaven to get their virgins,
Yes.
right? So,
Like bombing.
so in any way, they also have some sort of fear or insecurity there, right? Death is something which warms everyone. That is why Buddha says death is a very important tool to use to open the love that we have, right, to people who are around us. I remember, with one of our neighbors who we did not have a good relationship with, when the father of the house died, or the grandfather, I think, we sort of, as neighbors, we cooked and, all of that. And, they were drinking properly outside. Here, my room was closest to the neighbors. So I used to put the Satipatthana Sutra. They were drinking nicely outside. I used to put the Satipatthana Sutra in my room and blast it out. May the neighbor attain Nibbana. Small bottle. Right? So, regardless, we did not like them for whatever reasons, right? But because at a time of whatever suffering that they were going through in terms of loss, we went and helped. Likewise, that is something common to a lot of people, right? That is something which is common to a lot of people. Death brings us some sort of warmth. But remember, we must always remember, the end is the beginning to something new. The end is always the beginning to something new, right? Your TV breaks, opportunity for you to buy a new one. Your laptop breaks, your old ancient laptop breaks, opportunity for you to buy a new one. Whatever it is, something dying away gives opportunity to something which is new. Make use of that opportunity to build something new. Not to be afraid of something which is passing away. That is what a lot of people are finding very difficult to understand. How do I prepare myself? How do I prepare myself? In clinical trials, I have told this before, I think in clinical trials, to help terminally ill patients to cope better with death, right? Now they have started in specific hospitals around in the US and in the UK. They have started administering different variations of psychedelics, right? Through which that they have discovered that because of this microdosing of psychedelics, these terminally ill patients are now able to welcome, or rather die, more happily and peacefully. The reason behind which they have found is these psychedelic substances that they do administer helps patients sort of get rid of or numb their ego centers of the brain, which allows people to have a more open attitude towards the experience of death. People understand this is only a mind-made factor of ego. Right? This mind-made factor of ego is what sort of keeps us from sort of going further, or rather going beyond, right? You might feel afraid, oh, I have done this, I have done this. Remember, I have done this, I have done this is also ego. You're clinging on to something, right? You have done something and it has gone now, right? We are different people. Every moment, Panchaskandha, Panchupadanaskandha changes every moment. The chittas that you did that specific thing is now dead and gone. The body that you have done that specific thing years ago is also dead and gone. Remember, the Rupa only sustains for 17 or 18. How many? 19. 17 mind moments.
17.
17
17.
17. So 17 mind moments years ago, you have a whole new body today as well, right? All of that, the only thing that is holding you to whatever actions that you have committed in the past is your ego. This people must understand to let go of it. That is where vipassana comes in. That is where anitya, dukkha, anatma. What does this say? Anitya, dukkha, anatma says there is no connection. There is a newness. There is a new path. There's a new person, a new mind. A loving or giving base for a person to flourish, to let go of whatever is holding a person back, which relates to the past. That is what we are tapping or attempting to tap into with our practice, right? So it's no joke. This is nothing. Don't sort of assume that this is, we are doing all of this to sort of because we have nothing to do over quarantine. No. Right? These are things that we have to sort of be able to sort of bring into our lives. How many people can it close when the house is empty? How many people can be with themselves? When a person goes to a Goenka retreat, right? Many people between the first day, between the third day and the sixth day, many people cry and they wail and they want to go back. Why? They can't speak to anyone, right? They must keep to themselves. People can't keep to themselves. There's too much there. Right? People want to listen to music when they go to sleep. Why? They can't even close their eyes for 5 minutes to go to sleep because there's too much in their heads. Right? Everything, every moment, there's some sort of busyness. People can't wait without working. Why? When you are not working, you don't find any peace because you're reminded of different things. This is what we have to work on. Right? Nothing else. There's nothing mystical here. There's nothing God-given or God-sent here. This is all very logical with regard to the practice. These are things that we work on each and every single day as we move forward. That is what the practice is about. That is how we get rid of our sort of egos, which brings on this fear that we have with regards to different other things. And the sacrifices that you are unwilling to make for the practice, you will slowly get the confidence to make those necessary sacrifices to go beyond. Mala, did you have something to ask?
Yes, Bhante. What I want to ask is, how can you help a person who is dying? Because I have seen a lot of people dying, and is it good to have your family around you, or is it good to get somebody to chant like Metta Sutta to you? How can you help a person when a loved one, or for that matter, even if you are dying, we are dying, we can tell our children, this is what I want when I'm dying. So what's the best thing to do when somebody is dying?
Well, it wholly depends on the person, right? Some people, what the Buddha says is make the person happy. Do something which reminds a person of some sort of thing that brings happiness to that person's heart, right? But remember, if it is, for example, if you're talking about ourselves first, right? You have to pave your way, realize that we are going to die and prepare yourself. That you must do, right? That you must do. Prepare yourself to go, right? That is not anything sort of sad and depressing. Prepare for your next adventure, basically. For a person who is your loved one, who's leaving you or whatnot, right? Sometimes, remember, this is not an easy process. Metana kiyanna puluwan, but it is not an easy process, right? I have told you there have been very eminent monks. Polvatte Buddhadatta Hamdro. I mean, I shouldn't be saying this, but I told you before, Polvatte Buddhadatta Hamdro was lamenting and lamenting before his death, right? Colombo Vipassana Meditation Center Hamdro was crying and crying and crying. The monks from the Aranya were flabbergasted. Bhante, why are you crying? You are the head monk of the Vipassana Center of Colombo. It is not an easy thing, right? It is not an easy thing. It is not an easy thing because it is a lot to do with preparation. That person's preparation. So if you have a loved one and you can support, give that person support from now itself, right? That is what is expected, right? That is what is expected. Okay, now I have to go, right? I will see you all on Saturday, right? So take care and goodbye. Good night.
Good sunrise.
Good night.